Good evening, YouTube. My name is Daniel, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a shrunken head. So following is the list of items I used. Newspaper, hardening clay, tape, an empty CD case, wrapping paper tubes, flour, water, malleable wire, string, ink, shoelace, a keyring, white glue, pliers, paint, an old Halloween wig, and food coloring. I did not pay more than $20. Base and shape of the head. So you're going to take the empty CD case and the wrapping paper tube and stick them together and make the base upon which you will create your head. Next you'll take the newspaper and roll it up in a ball and tape it together, creating the shape of a head. My head here is about the size of an apple, maybe a large apple, and as you can see I drew the facial features on there just so I knew where to put them. Next you're going to take your hardening clay, and ideally it would be old scraps that you wouldn't use for anything else, and you're going to mush it up in a ball, and you're going to use it to cover the ball of newspaper and really accentuate the facial features like the nose and the eyelids and the cheekbones, because you want that to come through the paper mache. So as you can see, I've covered the entire head with the clay, and I've really accentuated the facial features like the nose and the cheekbones and the eyelids and the mouth. But here, imperfection is key. The Javari, when they created the shrunken heads, it was later on when the shrunken heads were found by the explorers, they were known worldwide for their imperfections. Paper mache. So for this step, you're going to need some flour and water, and you're going to mix it up to the point where it's at a consistency which is comfortably applicable with a paintbrush. Next, you're going to take some of that newspaper and you're going to rip it up into pieces that are small enough to work with without causing big creases in the facial features. And then you must cover the head. As you can see with this head, I've added the hanging string and the earrings. Now, hanging strings I'm going to talk about in a second. The earrings are made from the malleable wire. I bent them with the pliers, and then I just glued them onto the ear because the ear was not capable to be pierced. Hanging string. So before I go ahead and show you how to make the hanging string, I have to warn you, this was the longest and most grueling step of the entire process of making the shrunken head, and honestly the most messy as well. First off, I started with white string, so I needed to dye it black just for the effect, right? So I just took a bit of ink and ran the string through it, enough that I needed, and the string turned black pretty fast, and it dried actually really fast as well. So figure 1 here is just I took the malleable wire and I twisted it with the pliers just to make a little loop and then 2 little prongs so that the wire doesn't slip out of the clay. After that I stuck the wire into the hardening clay and I pressed the hardening clay down so it would make the flattest possible bit thing and it fit around the shape of the head. Now before I move on to figure 3, I actually put the hardening clay in the toaster oven for a little bit just to harden it up. So for figure 3, I took a keyring and I wrapped a shoelace around it just so it would be perfectly round. I also brought the shoelace down and I looped it around the little loop that I put from figure 1 into figure 2. So now figure 2 and the rest of it are attached together, and then I wrapped the dyed string around the shoelace and keyring little concoction thing I created. This is not absolutely necessary, I just did it for the effect, and it's more cosmetic than anything. It doesn't really make the string any stronger, well I guess it kind of does, but basically it just looks better, and that's the only reason I did it. In figure 4, I just glued the bottom of figure 3, which is actually figure 2. Anyway, I glued that with the white glue to the top of the head, and now you want to try to get that as centered as possible on the top of the head because you just don't want your head to be lopsided when it's hanging. Now, when the glue dries, you might even want to put some more glue around the edges. You just want this thing as secure as possible. This is probably the most important step of this entire process of making the shrunken head because it will be holding your head the entire time that it will ever be on display. And so now you can see how I got this picture of the paper mache head with you can see a little bit there, the hanging string on top of the head. Earrings. Now for this step you're going to need some of that hardening clay, some malleable wire, the pliers, and some of the dyed string from before. That is, of course, if you only want to copy this video and not just come up with your own creative way of making the shrunken head. So as you can see with my earring, I just played around with some clay and made loops with the wire and tied it to the string and made multiple beads and just tied them together and made as cool of an earring as I possibly could. I obviously made two. There's only a picture of one, but I obviously made two. For obvious reasons, there are two ears on your shrunken head. Painting it. Now for this step, hopefully all of you guessed that the only material required would be paint and a paintbrush, unless you want to use your fingers or other body parts that are not meant to be purchased at any store. So for the painting stage, it really up to you. I don't even want to explain how to paint it. Well, little basic guidelines, like, so you want to choose a kind of light color for the entire head, and then later on, after that has dried, you want to just add a little bit of black to it just to make it a little bit darker shade of what you already made, and do that around the eyes and the mouth. And after both those layers have dried, you want to just take some black and do the mouth and inside the nose and the eyelids, just the very inside of the eyelids. You don't want much to be black. You just want the important areas so that you can really tell where the eyelids are, where the mouth is, where the nose is, because it is kind of hard to tell. Finishing details. So this step is my favorite because this is the step where you can really make the head your own. The earlier steps were just basic guidelines. You can't really do much with it, but this step you really can alter it to make it your own. So first off, I just cut the hair off the wig and laid it out on the table so I could really see what I was working with. Then you want to glue the hair as seamlessly as possible onto the head and just make sure it covers most of the head. Well, not the face, but the back of the head too. I had issues covering the back of the head, so you got to make sure that the hair covers the back of the head. Once the glue has dried and the hair is firmly on the head, that's when I added the other details, like the earrings, and I added two little strings I found around the house onto the mouth. I just glued those on. The hair on my shrunken head was kind of matty, so I took some blue food coloring and I just wrapped up some blue string into a little bowl with it, and it just dyed in blue. So that's what I tied up the hair with, and I did it so it was like a little ball of hair with tuft at the end and the rest of the head at the top. So after all that, I've finished my shrunken head, and hopefully you have too. Hopefully it looks as great as mine does, but don't push yourself too hard. It's not always that easy to be as great as me. So until next time, YouTube, this is Danny P. Sark, and I am out of here.